Good morning, everybody, and welcome back. I should say welcome back. I'm coming off of my 2-week ban from YouTube, and I'm here in Minsk, 4th of August, 9:30 in the morning. And yeah, 2-week ban, and YouTube says I guess I must have been a really bad boy this time. You're not allowed to talk about certain things, and we all know this word, censorship. So a lot of things went on here this past couple of weeks. There was the Africa summit. A few things that people didn't mention. I'll just mention them too. What things were mentioned there, but not by anybody on video. And of course, the big news for me in the last days, at least, is Gonzalo Lira was, and hopefully still is, free, but we haven't heard from him. He made 3 videos. If you haven't seen those, you should look for those on the internet. It was on YouTube, and he was trying to get across the border to Hungary. Alex Cristoforo did a very good report on that a couple days ago. And Gonzalo has actually been freed, I guess, from the beginning of July, but he was laying low, of course, and probably trying to liquidate some of his things in Ukraine, in the Kharkov region, before trying to skedaddle out. And if they would have got him, it would have been for a prison term, I think a prison labor camp, and he would have been, according to him, and probably, you never know, like a death sentence for him. At his age, he has a heart condition, I believe, and yeah, he was going by motorcycle. Well, I'll add a few things. I don't want to say too much. You can catch that from Alex Cristoforo, what he said, or best watch Gonzalo Lira's 3 videos. And yeah, he was leaving by motorcycle. And one thing I would like to talk about, he was saying that it's not an option really to go through fields or something to get out, but taking main roads and legally crossing the border. And I don't know. We haven't heard from him for a few days. He said if we don't hear from him, that would have meant that the Ukrainian authorities have caught him. So that's possibly what happened. He put these videos out about 3 days ago. We haven't heard from him since. And he was 5 kilometers from the border when he put that out. So I don't know, it doesn't sound too good. And he maybe should have gone for the open fields. I think I would have done that. Seriously, I would have gone that way. It reminds me of a time back when I was in the military, and I was in the intelligence battalion at that time, and I was, this was the days when the wall fell, supposedly, between East and West Germany. And I was sent to the border, and there was 2 German women, and one guy was a British guy. He actually became well known sometime after that. And there's a few people watching this video that know what I'm talking about, from the old days. And he was in trouble once. His job was, one of his jobs, I guess, he was to supervise, he was a corporal, and he was to supervise the connecting of, like, say, nuclear bombs or bombs onto airplanes in the air base in Larbruck. And there's some, that was in the news recently too. It's in Weeze, an area called Weeze, in the North Rhine-Westphalen area of Germany, and that was in the news recently, and I can't remember what that was about. But I was on my ban, otherwise I probably would have wrote it down. But anyway, he's supposed to check off, that the bombs are properly connected to the airplane, so the wings and all. And of course he checked one off, and the airplane came back. Luckily it was kind of a dummy bomb. It was concrete. It wasn't a real nuclear bomb. And it came back just with some wires there, and the bomb was missing. I think it had a flight to the English Channel. I don't really know what happened with him after that. Anyway, he settled down in Germany, I think Mönchengladbach area. I'm not too positive where he settled down, and he was like became trained in something like a supervisor in old folks homes, like what do they call that? Invalid care for old elderly people or something. So he was not a bad guy, just that kind of thing. But anyway, I was with him at that time, and we went to the border, and looking through some telescopic things, and we saw that there was nobody in the guard towers. Nobody, they were unmanned on the border of East Germany, so they had pulling them off. And then like the next day or 2 days later, the border opened up, and then we were flooded by East Germans going shopping. I lived on the border. I was stationed there, right on the front lines, and so. But it was, all the stores were empty. The East Germans came in and were buying everything from all the supermarkets on the border there. So anyway, that's just a side note. But mostly what I get off on these tangents of my own here. But mostly what I was going to be talking about is, like a lot of this censorship, because I have been a victim of that in the past weeks, I suppose. And I saw this video by Clayton and Natalie Morris, and they were talking partly about that, but mostly was about sometimes it's a self-censorship that we censor ourselves when you're talking about a subject that is so atrocious that it makes you uncomfortable. And exactly that is what Clayton Morris was talking about. A lot of people are very uncomfortable. And then there's this movie that came out recently, and it's called The Sound of Freedom, I believe. Sound of Freedom? Anyway, it was the movie Sound of Freedom, I think. I wrote it down here in my notes. I shouldn't be jumping ahead, which I am doing right now. But it's sponsored by Mel Gibson as well. And, it's about child trafficking. And that movie was about child sex trafficking. And Clayton Morris was making a video, and he was even talking about reports like from the Gray Zone and even from left-wing publications before the military operation, and talking about the problems of child trafficking in relation to Ukraine. Big problems. That movie is not about Ukraine. It was about South America. I believe that was in Colombia, and stealing children. And but in Ukraine, I don't know. I hope I don't get censored for this. I don't think I will. Because Clayton Morris was able to say that. But just like a lot of people are saying, there's a different hierarchy here, maybe even on YouTube, just as much as it is in the minds of the State Department of the United States, on which people have more rights and which people are more important. As you know, the Americans and the Israelis are by far the most important. And then, of course, people look at Hispanic places as less important. And then less important to them are the Africans. And in the less important people are, of course, the Russians, where you're not supposed to really give a damn about the black people, and well, at least the African black people. And the Russians, you're supposed to be really bad. You're supposed to be prosecuting them or persecuting them. Not that you're supposed to do that to the Africans, but you're supposed to do it to the Russians, because in their mind they're just evil people. As you see, the people here in Belarus, it's in the same mold. And it used to be like that for Ukraine. I think there's a crazy guy up there. They have them here too. And Belarus, it looks like it. Watch out. Might be talking to me here. But as far as what they're talking about well, luckily he spared me. In Ukraine, it's not just child sex trafficking. It's child labor, slavery, and then also, the worst one actually. Even though they're all bad, they're all very, very bad. It's the organ trade, and of course Clayton Morris and Natalie Morris, they mentioned that, so I should be allowed to say that as well. But like I said, there's a hierarchy, and if I had a bigger channel and a lot more viewers and things, I have a bigger chance of not being censored. And I hope I'm not going to get taken off for that one, because if you talk about some sort of, like I did on my last one, I was censored for, and I think I've been censored already in the past also from this, is if you talk about medical treatments or research having to do with Ukraine especially, That's not allowed. You know, talk about maybe purposefully infecting mosquitoes and viruses, and that word alone, I think, will set off algorithms right now. So I think it's certain words you say your videos don't get shown to a very wide audience, and that's of course the case with me. That's why I have less subscribers. But it's amazing that I got I think, what was it, 11 new subscribers during the time when I was banned here. And all you subscribers actually are incredible for me not putting out a video for 2 weeks, and nobody's really canceled. I mean, you haven't canceled your subscription or whatever they call it to me. I mean, I really appreciate that. You know, that you haven't done that. Say, this guy's not putting out videos, because it's almost impossible to send out a message and say, hey, I've been censored, I'm off the air for 2 weeks. So yes, that's how that is. But anyway, we're all glad Gonzalo Lira was released, and I hope he's still free. But Alex Cristoforo mentioned that there was some rumors that maybe they had got him, you know, and it's kind of telling that he has not put anything out for those days after that. So anyway, let's talk a little bit more about some of the things I was supposed to talk about. I got so much information. Actually, this thing could be hours long. Here I'm going back, notes. Actually, I started writing down notes, and I was going to make a video, even though I wasn't going to upload it. I was going to do it like 2 or 3 days before my ban was lifted. Actually, I should tell you, this area here to the right, this is early in the morning, it's like 9:30, but there's nothing going on, luckily. But over there, and there's a street on the other side, and that's where it's, I don't know how you'd say, it's like I call it a gold digger type of area, you know, where there's a lot of wealthy people. I think I'm heading right over here. Nearby is a casino. Gambling is allowed in Belarus, and a lot of Russians come here to gamble because it's not allowed in Russia. So you get the rich Russians coming here, and then there's a lot of what do you say, clubs and things over there. And like at nighttime, it's big party time over there, and lots of pretty girls and rich guys or something. So a beer is 15 rubles, and I can tell you, you can find places where there's fabulous beer for 3 rubles. And last year, right by where I live, there was fabulous beer for 2 rubles, but the snow collapsed this tent that they had out there, and they never rebuilt it again. And I don't know if they would have still offered it for 2 or 2.50. Even if it was 3, it's great. But here, it gets up to 15 rubles for a beer. I mean, talk about crazy stuff. I'll just show you. This is over here. It's a casino. It says casino slots. I don't even know what that means, to be honest with you. I'm not really into gambling. Luna. Maybe that's one of the things. Princess. I'll come and show you. My Dent Clinic. I wonder if that. Hey, I'm a dental technician, and yeah, that looks like it's a dental place. I could get probably for rich people. Yeah, trained in the West. I don't know. I don't know if I want to do that. But here we go. See, it says casino slots. Look at Harley Davidson's, baby. This one's a Honda. And there's a Kawasaki Ninja. I don't know what that is, maybe 900. Here's a Harley, I guess. Looks, I don't know, lowrider. I don't know my motorcycles anymore. Easy Glide or something like that. Who knows? Okay, let's get into the news a little bit more. What I was going to tell you about that a lot of people seem to have missed from this Africa summit is actually Libya was there too. And in this summit, less leaders were there. The United States in particular was really pressuring African countries not to send their head of state there, and not even to attend at all anyway. You know, this is really getting to be some competition right now, and you know, USA going against this multipolar world and still wanting to preserve their hegemony over the entire earth, you know, become, or at least stay the masters of the universe. instead of having it spread out amongst many countries, as Russia is trying to do, multipolar. They want it to be unipolar, where everybody has to go with whatever the United States and their agents, puppets and things tell them. So, but anyway, what I was saying is Libya. Libya has asked Russia to militarily intervene. Now remember, when there was a country not too far away from there was Syria. And Syria asked Russia to intervene. And of course they had a long friendship back even times of the Soviet Union, and Russia did intervene. And as we all have been told, the United States was fighting against, was it ISIS or Al-Qaeda, or anyway, terrorism in Syria. But the terrorist groups were growing in leaps and bounds when the USA was supposedly fighting them. Leaps and bounds. And then Russia entered the conflict, and right away they were reduced by 50%. So it makes you wonder about the USA. And if you heard a lot of the reports back then, the United States, for some reason, and it's fake news, we all know it's fake news, they were bombing, the US was bombing industrial centers where there was no Al-Qaeda for 100 miles. And they were destroying the factories, bombing the bridges, and everybody in Syria was saying there was no Al-Qaeda there, or there was at one time, and then they left a long time ago, and on and on and on. And it's very strange. A lot of these terrorists, they had British accents. They were, I mean, they were talking in English with British accents and whatnot, you know. And then it was before that time when the West was intervening, NATO, so to speak, was intervening in Libya at that time. And I remember very distinctly, the whole thing kicked off was in Benghazi with British commandos. British commandos probably ferried over from Italy, I'm guessing. I don't know if it was Spain. Anyway, they were there, and they landed on the shores there, and then they stormed into some high centers in Benghazi, and that's what kicked it all off. And then you remember Hillary Clinton, when she was head of the State Department there under Obama, and all these things that happened there, and the ambassador getting attacked and all of that sort of stuff, and she stayed in bed. She didn't want to answer the calls, you know, that sort of thing. And then she was involved in giving weapons transfer. Actually, I should come this, the light is in my, you can see me a lot better instead of a silhouette. And she was involved in some of these, I don't know, is this alleged, or is, well, it is known, but according to the Western media, I don't know if that's alleged that Hillary Clinton was involved in sending weapons from Libya, the captured weapons supposedly from Muammar Gaddafi, and sending them to Libya. And somehow these weapons, they got into the hands of terrorists, you know, that the USA was fighting. But some got into the good terrorists, you know, the good ones. They smile, they give you a smile and a laugh and a giggle when they slit your throat. Those are good terrorists. But the bad ones are the ones that they scowl at you when they cut your throat, you know, or when they throw you off a building or things like that. So, and when they're destroying Muslim and Christian shrines, by the way, destroying these things like where Jonah and the whale, I believe, that was one shrine that I think they destroyed. They have to smile. If you smile when you're doing that, I guess then you're a good terrorist. So, you know. And right now, I guess the United States has bases in 2 parts of Syria. I was thinking it was just one. I think of the Tamf military base. And of course, from that base, they control a few fighters. Terrorist camps. I think there was 3 of them. And of course, I mentioned in one of my videos, I think, did I mention, or was that one deleted? Wow, look at this, a fish down here. Probably can't see it. Swimming on the top. Probably can't see it, I shouldn't have showed it to you. It's going further out anyway, but where was I? I don't even know where I was there. Well, it was, I think I was talking about this terrorists, and they were, what I was going to say is a lot of these, there's recruitment centers to go for these nationalist fighters. run through American-controlled nationalist bases for fighters to go and join in the conflict in Ukraine. But you never know. It might be heating up a lot more in Syria, and they're going to maybe want them to stay there. A lot of things are heating up. You never know really what's going to happen, and because it's all reaction and a reaction, action, reaction, and then reaction again. Who knows what's going to kick off? Things could kick off anytime in Serbia and Taiwan, and we already know things are kicked off quite badly in Ukraine. But let me keep going here, find out what else I was going to say. Anyway, so you might see some kind of an invitation there, and remember it. Wagner forces, I think they got involved in Mali. That's kind of an unofficial Russian forces, I guess you would say. Even though they're connected to the government, they're sort of in a private way, and I think that was the whole idea of creating Wagner. And Wagner, I don't know how much more they're linked to Russia now, because they're now in Belarus. This is all going to be kind of strange, and it's a new territory to see if, I know that they are still in Africa, Wagner, but let's just see what happens here, as the majority of them, I believe, are now in Belarus, not far from here, and I want to actually go there to that camp. But I don't really know how that's really gonna, if that's gonna even stay that way, because you see how that camp is set up. They show you the satellite photos, and all these tents are bunched together. Doesn't look very promising to me. I tell you what, I wouldn't want to be staying in one of those tents. And these people are well paid. They're a private military organization. I doubt very, very much that soldiers, or many of them, stay in tents. They're probably, a lot of them staying or maybe they're building a lot of housing around the military posts there, because they would be living off base if they're well paid mercenaries. And who would want to stay in these tents all bunched together? I can understand before the military operation when they had Russian soldiers there, because the military operation didn't really start kicking off by that time, and it was just a short period of time Russian soldiers were staying there. But you may as well just paint a big target there. If you have a whole bunch of tents bunched up in one area, one large-sized bomb is going to kill a huge amount of people. Or you can get 4 bombs and you can wipe out the entire force. So I would, you don't do that. I don't know. The U.S. military was doing that sort of stuff even when I was in, and I had to stay in tents like that. And I was thinking, gosh, you may as well just say target. Make a big sign that says target, so that they can see it from the air. I don't know. That's just my opinion. I'm more of a, I guess, in favor of, say, the guerrillas. I guess how guerrillas would be doing it, and cover and concealment. You learn that in the military, but I don't know. And you would expect much better from Wagner. Anyway, I won't go into that sort of stuff. But Libya is another example of U.S. intervention. Look at that, how they destabilize and virtually destroy these countries. Libya, Syria, Iraq. And a lot of these African countries, they know that. They're not stupid. So they don't want that to happen to them. And climate change. As we know, climate change is a new form of religion right now. This guy talks pretty loud on his cell phone. And but I was watching, I think it was Neil, what's his name? Oh, I forgot his name now. Did I write it down here? Probably didn't write it down. But anyway, he makes a lot of commentaries on, and he talks a lot about climate change. He talks a lot about climate change on his videos. Neil, he's a Irish person, I believe, and he was talking about these high temperatures, and there was a lot of times in history when the temperatures were much, much, much higher than now. As temperatures were so high, and that at one point in the 1300s, 1304 and 1307, the Loire River in France and the Rhine River in Germany dried up. So you couldn't even take a rowboat on the Rhine. And as you know, they have deep barges going up and down the Rhine now. But it was so dry. And 1304, in the year like 1,000 and things, and there were times in history where you couldn't even work for more than an hour outdoors or you would die because it was so hot. But no, 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 it's global warming now. So right now it's very, very gentle compared to some other times in past history. I just had to put that in there. 1846, Paris had temperatures as high as 120 degrees Fahrenheit. 120 degrees Fahrenheit in Paris. And Paris has been hot, the past few years, but not 120 degrees Fahrenheit. What is that, a 45 degrees Celsius? I don't really know. So Paris had times where it was much, much hotter than right now. So, and even a lot of people that are intelligent, they believe that this is all driven by man-made factors. And when I was studying climate science back in the days in the university, I remember, it was a little not as important a factor at that time, but it was actually substantial, and they knew that it happened in history. When the Earth spins on its axis, it tilts, and sometimes it tilts much more than at other times, and it changes the climate drastically. And they believe that a lot of that tilt has things to do with El Nino and La Nina and things like that. There's a lot of different things that influence climate, and sometimes when you have two things happening at once, it becomes even much more pronounced. And I think they were saying that I think by the year 2030, everything is supposed to start to normalize or to be normal again. I think the year 2030, so we have a ways to go. But you saw, what's his name? Ocasio-Cortez, AOC or whatever, and a lot of these people are saying the world's going to come to an end. I think it's now 6 years. I think in 6 years they say the world is going to end, I believe, if we don't start paying a lot more money in taxation and things, taxing the people to death, because if you tax people, it changes the weather. You know that. That's just common knowledge, right? Pay more taxes, the weather gets better. So, that's how that all works, And then they can spray a bunch of chemicals into the atmosphere, like Bill Gates was suggesting. Lots of these toxic chemicals, like aluminum oxide and things, that are actually toxic to all life, and destroying plants and things like that, because they reflect the sun's rays back into the atmosphere and all kinds of stuff. So we have to intervene. It's just like the U.S. intervening in all these countries. You see how much greatness and how much better that makes everything, all intervening and everything. So, So let's talk about, the sea levels. I guess, they were much higher many times in the past. And why is it that all these rich people, they build their mansions all near the coast? Not just Barack Obama and Al Gore. They all have mansions on the coastlines. When the coast is supposed to be, all these things are supposed to be flooded. Why do they do that? It's really strange, isn't it? I guess they want to be the victims, play the victims or something. Or maybe they don't have anything to fear. They know the real truth. So, and the rising CO2 levels is not a cause. It's not a cause of warming the atmosphere. Mm-hmm. It's not a cause. It's a consequence of it, of when the atmosphere gets that way. And of course, the CO2 levels are much lower now than they have been at many other times in history. But they don't want to tell you that. They want you to think otherwise. Why am I walking outside of a casino here? Princess Casino. So let's see. Yeah, and I already talked about Africa, that only 17 countries sent their head of state. And a lot of these countries that they didn't send it, it's not because they didn't want to send it or they were scared because the U.S. is pressuring them. A lot of them, through Western influences, a lot of them, they leased planes from Dubai, and Dubai would not insure them, so they couldn't fly. So in other words, they cut off their air transportation, then they couldn't get to the summit in St. Petersburg. It's not that they didn't want to go or they weren't going to send anybody, but at the last minute, they were canceled. I don't know how many countries that was. And a lot of countries also, at the same time, they were pressured by the West not to allow these airplanes to fly over in their airspace. So they couldn't get there because the United States was able to get a lot of countries to ban any flights from certain countries to fly over their airspace. So a lot of this stuff is not talked about any way possible to try to make it look bad. So That's how they interfere with that. Hmm. Or threats, like they'll cut their trade ties if they send the head of state there, things like that. And there was an interview just recently about one of the co-founders of Greenpeace. I think there was only two, but one is Dr. Patrick Moore, a climate scientist. Um, and he says that this climate change thing is all phony. And of course it's all phony. And it's not that there is no climate change. Climate change has been happening since the beginning of time, before human beings were even on planet Earth. So, but they used to call it global warming, and first it was the greenhouse effect, then it was global warming, and man-made global warming, and then they changed it to climate change, which is an accurate term, but anyway. And also, Alex Christoforo, I think he dismissed this as being fake, but it's not really fake that the UK is training 2,000 Ukrainian commandos to storm and take Crimea. And as you know, from the very beginning, I mean, even before this military operation, and I knew this even in the 1980s, that the US had a desire, at that time it was a desire to kick Russia out of the Crimea. But of course, since it was so easy for the United States to be taking over all these countries, obviously, which I didn't hear, but I know, you can just tell by looking at all the evidence, the United States wants to take the Crimea. And that is supposed to, in my opinion, and I think it's very obvious, that's the reward for all the money and the weapons that they're sending to Ukraine. Ukraine is to give, and it's not to give them that, but to allow them to control the Crimea. Even though the Crimea belongs to Ukraine, it's sort of like the United States controls parts of Syria. And they have a whole section of Syria that they can control, but that is not willing. They're not invited, they were never invited there, but they refuse to go, even though Syria, and everybody's telling them to get out of there because it's an illegal occupation. But they're trying to make a legal occupation of Crimea. And of course, I've been saying from the very beginning, that's what the United States wants. And of course, it's becoming more and more obvious. It wasn't obvious when I was saying this before, but because in the days when I was working in the military, and I talked to a lot of higher up people, and I knew because I heard from them, and I heard from things in the university and all, that the U.S., one of their biggest foreign policy goals was to kick Russia out of the Crimea, because in their eyes, Russia would cease to be a power. It would become like a third world nation or something at that time. It would be a poor country. They could kick them out of the Crimea, which isn't really true anyway, but that's what they thought, the neocons. And I think I was in the military at the time when the neocons were really big into control back then. And I met quite a few of them. And some of them I kind of liked as people, Colin Powell, Richard Armitage, and there was General Haig, I met him, and some, and Ronald Reagan was not a neocon, and I didn't really talk with him. I just sat next to him, I ate dinner sitting next to, Ronald Reagan, and I've said that before, and I feel like I'm bragging, which of course I am. Well, actually, no, I'm just trying to be a little bit more credible, like I'm not just some weirdo guy that doesn't know anything and never had any experience and just sitting here talking to you, which in a lot of cases that's true, but but not in every case. So anyway, Patrick Moore, founder of Greenpeace, saying that it's phony, and that's very important to remember. But anyway, these 2,000 Ukrainian troops, they're supposed to be trying to take back the Crimea by Christmas. Good luck on that one. Christmas. What's that, like 6 months or so from now? And I think they were supposed to have already taken it now. They were supposed to have taken it by the 1st of June. I think it was Podolyak saying that he's going to be on his favorite spot on the beach by the 1st of June, and I don't know how many times. I don't even want to go into that. You've heard it all yourself, how they're going to take it, and they're still saying that. But anyway, these 2,000 troops, I don't know if Alex Christoforo actually read this. I read one that was more in depth, because obviously it sounds really stupid to send 2,000 troops and try to take the Crimea from Russia. But what it was supposed to mean is supposed to be these commandos, or probably, and that's actually how a lot of times this actually happens. So this is actually a viable a viable plan, and it's actually happened before in history, and they've even used less troops. Germany did that against Holland in World War II with less troops. I think less than 50 troops. I'm not saying they took Holland with 50 troops, but it was spearheaded, and they used airborne troops at that time, and that was a new thing back then, you know, airborne. I don't know, I won't go into that. I can talk about it. It's very interesting stuff. And actually, I think it was even outlined by British historian Liddell Hart in his History of World War II. That's very good. You know, if you have that thick book, very nice. And he gives a lot of credit to Germany, which is very good when you see how the British are right now against, for example, the Russians. You know, they're really propagandistic. But that was a good book by Liddell Hart. But anyway, the 2,000 Ukrainian troops are supposed to spearhead this, and they're supposed to be, they say, they're called the tip of the spear, and two larger groups are supposed to follow, and it's supposed to involve strikes from the sea and the air, as well as from land, and using long-range Western missiles, long-range Western missiles, and probably more than just this Storm Shadow missiles from the UK, and possibly, I can't remember the name from the German ones, and then there's the ATACMS from the US possibly, but the US keeps saying, oh, we're not going to send them. That doesn't mean anything. Promises from the US, and we're not going to do this and we're not going to do that. I think, don't go into that. Everything they said they're not going to do, they've already done, so it's not even worth mentioning that. So, oh, I saw something else. Actually, you know, in closing about that attack, so it's not really something that's stupid. And I think Alex Christoforo, maybe he just didn't get the entire plan. So it's not really stupid. It's not really stupid, and I'm not saying they're going to do it, and they're probably not going to be successful if they would do it. So I'm just saying that it's not a stupid idea, but they're just not. The British and the U.S. militaries and all, they're pretty bad right now. They're far worse than Russia. Russia's not bad. I'm not saying Russia's bad, but they're bad. The U.S. and the British and the Germans and all of them, they're terrible. They're all terrible. The elite forces, I would say, country from the so-called West, or at least the West and their allies, the number one force was the Ukrainians, and they got their butts kicked over and over and over again by Russia. So what does that tell you? And do you think these people that are worse are going to train the Ukrainians, which can't make it anything against the Russians? It's going to have to be luck. The Russians are just too far advanced. Weapons are better. And watch Andrei Martyanov, and you'll find out how far more superior the Russians are to anything in the West. So if I were the West, I wouldn't be messing with Russia. They've lost. And the only thing that would help them is really getting fully involved and overwhelming. That would be the only chance. Or maybe nuclear weapons. But let's not get into that stuff. That's all speculation. George Bush, 32 years ago, George Bush the first, not George Bush the second, George Bush the first. This is a quote: Americans will not support, and he said this to the government of Ukraine while he was in Ukraine. Catch this: Americans will not support those who seek independence to install localized despotism. They will not aid those who promote suicidal nationalism based on ethnic hatred. But look at this. Look at what the U.S. is doing now. So they're doing exactly what they said they wouldn't do. You know, not the same government, not the same political party, but nevertheless. But the Ukrainian government, even in that time, was outraged. That was in 1991. So they even had a lot of Nazis back then. The USA, actually, a lot of time, they started right after World War II, and at least in the 1950s. I think even Scott Ritter was talking about this. Probably speaks English, was smiling. Scott Ritter was talking about this, that they were working with these radical people back in those days. So, in the 1950s. I've talked about that before. and I got too many other things to talk about, so I'm not going to get into it. Hmm. But the big, but they say many in the U.S. and the collective West do support Nazis. They do now. So I guess you call this political creep, mission creep. In the West, look at the Baltic states. In effect, a lot of these people, and they don't even realize it themselves, they are Nazis. And I guess I can say that word Nazi because Clayton Morris gets away with it. But I think it's algorithms. They suppress the videos, so I'm suppressed anyway. I can't hold myself talking about saying these words and get suppressed. So, by the way, after saying that, I'll tell you, I'm kind of working on a thing, and it's not even possible possibly until September. Maybe I can get in a different type of format where I can actually be putting out news. I won't say any more than that. Maybe I don't know, I'm not going to talk about it more because I don't like to talk about things until I hear more about it myself, to where I can get some support. And not on YouTube, probably not, but on some other thing, and get a huge amount of exposure, and not from my videos, but somebody else maybe filming with better equipment and things like that. So anyway, say no more. Okay, let's see, what is this? Was this there was new laws coming into effect. Oh, this is in Ukraine. This was in Ukraine. They're coming out with new laws. I believe this was Ukraine. Let's see. And it's starting 1st of August. And there's new finance laws. Bonuses. I think it's Ukraine. Let me displaced people found. Yeah, this is from Ukraine. The Ukraine government put out, a lot of the bonuses, military bonuses, they'll be reduced. It's the only one I know of. Displaced people. Now, this is reducing bonuses. And I wrote here, is the only one I know. Anyway, displaced people found to be living abroad. Instead of living in Ukraine. So if you moved, if you were actually, maybe your house was bombed or something like that, and you fled to the West, you're going to lose your pay benefits. Things that you're getting paid benefits from Ukraine, you're going to lose them if you're not living in Ukraine. I guess this is maybe to help their mobilization. And there's going to be new restrictions on cash terminals. Maybe you can only take out so much. I don't really know what they mean by that. Payments through cash terminals will have new restrictions. And taxes on businesses will return to the pre-war levels, which they were taxing them much higher. As you know, a lot of people left Ukraine, a huge portion. I don't know, was it 1/3 or 1/4 of the population, and the rest, so many people have been massacred, by them sending these people, to the front to get killed, and so anyway, they're probably having a hard time getting revenues. So that's why they're having to return to the old tax revenues for businesses, and of course, laws for mobilization of conscripts will be simplified and relaxed. So in other words, it's going to be much easier. And of course, they just go take people off and I'll tell you what, in effect, they're already relaxed and they're just taking people based on their age. But maybe this relaxed thing means that if you're injured or something, or if you have some kind of a, for example, a bad heart, they're going to still conscript you. Because they need bodies, they need people to run through the minefields, because the equipment, also gets blown up, stuff from Sweden, and it's a lot cheaper to send bodies through there, apparently. We already know that that's what they're doing, so. Okay, and France, Niger, talk about Niger. What's going on? Incredible. France, they're watching their colonial empire in Africa, being whittled away, and the people in Africa, they're abandoning their chains of colonialism and latching onto the multipolar world led by Russia. But the USA and Niger And normally the USA sort of takes over and everybody has to allow, because they're the masters of the universe. So it's just like how the British Empire allowed the United States to take over their empire, many, many, many decades ago, time after time. And it's actually continues. Well, what's that island? Diego Garcia, was that? I think that one used to be part of Great Britain. I think it was Diego Garcia. Maybe I've got that name wrong. Doesn't sound right. Maybe. Anyway, there's islands, and the British had control of it, and the U.S. just moved in and took over. I can't remember the name. I might be wrong on that. I don't know. I think that was by the Seychelles and Indian Ocean area. So somebody correct me, or maybe make that straight. Whatever I got wrong there. Woman giving me some strange look here. Young girl there. Or young lady, not girl. Anyway, France is trying to hold on to Niger, and as you know, what happened was the pro-Western government there that just recently, before this coup, just a few months ago, Anthony Blinken was there, and the government of that country proclaimed their fealty to the United States, while all these other governments are now leaning towards Russia. And this guy said, we still want to remain a slave of the United States, a vassal state of the United States, and it was formerly under France, as you know. So, and but the other countries, they don't even like that. And anyway, the people didn't like that government. Anyway, the government is overthrown, and the people are very happy, and its temporary leader, I think, is part of the military. And there are what's that called? Anyway, these West African states, a lot of them are under pressure as well, and a lot of, it's because this was supposedly, this government was a democratically elected government, so they are kind of threatening military intervention, and France is threatening military intervention, and of course NATO and the European Union are, and they're evacuating their citizens out of there in the USA. And I think now, recently, I think it was just yesterday, that this former leader of Niger officially asked the United States to militarily intervene. And a lot of people are, and of course, Putin is stressing dialogue, and there's ways to solve this, but and Russia is not involved at all. No matter what anybody says, nobody. I think it was even Italy. The Italian government was looking into this, and they cannot find any ties that Russia is involved in any way, shape, or form in any of this that is going on in Niger. Even though you're probably going to be hearing it from a lot of Western countries. Of course, the USA is going to say that, but. They're involved. As I say, Blinken was there just a couple months before the coup anyway. So I'll have to face this way so you don't get me silhouetted. I'll risk my eyes being in the sun. So what else? Long video, people, but I had a lot of things I haven't been with you for 2 weeks, and I'm so glad that you guys were sticking with me. Nobody canceled. I can't believe that. 2 weeks. So, but also Wagner is actually active in that area, not in that country itself, and they're not. But I think Prigozhin, who's actually less and less important in Wagner, he said that he will assist them. Apparently, a lot of people aren't listening so much to Prigozhin anymore, but maybe he's trying to become more valid or something like that by saying that. But I think he's still involved with Wagner, so we'll have to wait and see on that one. And Justin Trudeau and his wife are separating after 18 years of marriage, and after the past few years they haven't hardly been seen together anyway. And Justin Trudeau, jeez, he's one of the most dishonest leaders on planet Earth. Dastardly guy. I thought Harper was bad. Everybody was everybody was hopeful when Trudeau came in, but he's turned out to be far, far, far worse. You know, like, you know. Anyway, I think I wrote that down about him and the truckers. But all of you in Canada, you poor people, you poor souls in Canada, you have to believe everything he says. You know, it's just personal business anyway, as far as that is concerned, but you have to believe him anyway, or else he's going to freeze your bank account. And like he did to everybody who donated. If you donated $5 Canadian to the trucker movement, he froze your bank account. Nasty, nasty, nasty guy. You know, so I guess you're funding terrorism or something like that. Probably that's what he said. Really, I mean, here they talk about Lukashenko over here. And Lukashenko, how a lot of things happen here in Belarus, he's not that happy about. But he does not intervene. And he even says he's authoritarian. But if you lived here, you find out a lot more. He doesn't like this and doesn't like that. I'll tell you what, there's even, I believe, at least one topless bar in Minsk. And he's not for any of that kind of stuff. There's things that he says, even though they happen in Belarus. And if he was a dictator, like they say, he could just put his foot down. In other words, he's not a dictator. He's authoritative in a lot of ways. But, you know, I like a lot of the things because I try to tell people, you know, whenever you're trying to judge anybody, you know, there was, and like I said, I'm not a religious person, really. Spiritual, maybe. I don't know. I know there's a big difference, I suppose. But Jesus once said, and I love Jesus, and I love Jesus' wisdom. He said, "Know them by their fruits." When you're judging somebody, you know, sometimes you get confused, and even maybe God moves in mysterious ways, they say, you know. He does one thing, and of course what the result that it creates is actually maybe a positive thing, you know, depending on certain conditions. But like, if you don't like certain things about Lukashenko, you have to come to the country of Belarus and see how Belarus is run and how the society works here and how the people are, their moral values, the economy, how things happen here. So I choose to judge Lukashenko by his fruits, know them by their fruits. And you hear this flowery stuff coming out of Trudeau's mouth, Biden's, Macron's, but look at their countries. I'm not talking about the people of the country, but look at what the people are made to do and the provocations that the government unleashes upon their people. Need I say more? I'm just saying, think of that thing. Think of that, the macro condition, you should say, is to know them by their fruits, you know, and then you can then look at Belarus and look at a lot of other places. So the only thing I don't like about Lukashenko is he's not able to control the weather, and it gets a little bit too cold here a certain time of the year called winter, and I wish it could be like this all the time, and that's his fault. So anyway, yeah, like I said, I don't know, I got to be careful too, you know, talking about any of this kind of stuff, because maybe they're going to cancel me again, and they told me if I get canceled again, it's going to be like permanent. So at least maybe over a certain time period. Maybe if I can last, I believe, to the end of September without getting canceled, then I can go back to square one and I can start getting canceled again. And then the third time I'll be out, you know, 3 strikes you're out sort of a deal. But all you people, you know, tell those truckers that when they're driving alone in their trucks, you know, going across the country alone in their trucks, they better wear a mask. You know, I think that was mostly the problem of the truckers were pissed off about when they started that thing, that you have to wear a mask when you're driving alone in your truck, you know. You know, it's to make sure your truck doesn't get sick, you know. Or you might give your truck COVID, or maybe you might get COVID from your truck because those masks are so effective. They're so effective. You know, I mean, I have to say that. If I start saying that they're not effective, then I will be deleted. So the masks work, people. So I already talked about those African leaders talking, and all these threats and things, what happens to Africa, that's actually what you can trace back to what's happening in Niger right now, and this, to all these threats and this U.S. intervening and all that sort of thing. So, and you have to see also the trade of some of these countries. They're talking about Russia getting involved, and let's see if I can. At present, there's I was disturbed before, and I was writing down these numbers, and I don't have them anymore. But anyway, Africa-China trade is 280 billion. In the USA, I forgot. Like I said, I was disturbed, and I couldn't write that one down. And Russia, but they're much less. Russia does less trade with Africa than the United States does. And the biggest, of course, by far, is China. China and Africa. And of course, China is the big trading partner for everybody on Earth. So, another threat in the Ukraine. The UK intelligence said that Russia, let's see, we'll go this way. Has a new secret weapon against the Ukrainians. And it's called bushes. I'm not talking about the George bushes. I'm talking about the kind that grow. There's some right over here. You see this stuff? Look at this. Look at, I even have them laying right here, and I'll show them to you. I'll show them to you. So this is evidence. They have them in Belarus too. These are the things that they're using. They're using against Ukraine to beat the Ukraine. And look at, here's evidence right now. I got to be very sneaky to show this to you. Look. See this? This is evidence. There's one right over here. Look at this. Look. Look at this, people. Look. Look. See, I showed it to you. Bushes. They're using these as secret weapons against the Ukrainians, and they're saying that that they're using these weeds. It is because it's blocking Ukraine, in the minefields as well. It's more difficult to clear the mines with these secret weapons by the Russians. The infantry, it says, Russia is, but it's not just because it's difficult to clear. They said that the Russian infantry assaults are launched from weeds. The Russians are able to hide in the weeds. How dastardly they are. They're hiding in the weeds. Now the Ukrainians wouldn't do that. They'd come right out in the open, as you know. They'd come right out in the open and stand there like this. And you see how they're doing that, the Ukrainians, in the way they are. Jeez. But it would be terrible if you use civilians, if you set up your artillery pieces in the middle of neighborhoods so the Russians wouldn't bomb them, but they're not doing that, are they? Yes. So anyway, Mother Nature is going to be sanctioned by the West because Mother Nature is assisting the Russians. So Mother Nature is now an enemy. They're a Russian asset. Mother Nature is a Russian asset. Yes, and I was talking about redacted a little bit earlier, and they're talking about, I'll tell you, anyway, they were mentioning, of course, and I'm sure, I hope I said it right, but this movie was called The Sound of Freedom, and it's online. You can watch it right now. It's kind of a bootleg form. I actually did. I don't know if that's illegal, but I saw it on Putlocker, and you look up movies, get rid of all those pop-ups, one after the other, coming and coming and coming and coming, and then the buffering and sort of stuff like that. But yeah, that just gives you an idea, and of course they probably showed you that based on places in Colombia. And I probably can't talk about Oprah Winfrey, can I? And her organizations, because I don't know, they're doing that all over on the internet, but I don't think I'm allowed to do that, or else they'll probably censor me again, I'll tell you. So I hope I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything. I told you to wear a mask. I didn't say the name of any kind of a virus or nothing like that. I didn't say anything about any country and laboratories creating any sicknesses or things like that. So I shouldn't be deleted, because that'll be the end of it for me. But anyway, Redacted, they had a video, and I have the name of it. I thought I wrote it on this page. It's on a little bit further, but it's how in Ukraine there's desperate women. The whole situation there, as you know, is desperate, and their taxes, I already told you, they're going up and things like that. And a lot of these women, they lost their husbands, and some of them didn't work. Maybe their husband had a good income before it was taken off the streets, and all of a sudden their husband doesn't come home anymore. Terrible, terrible, terrible stuff. And they have children to support. So a lot of them are, they're made to have babies, and they're housing them. Like, there's a huge place in Kiev, Redacted. Like I said, you should watch that. I'll tell you the title of that when I get there. But a lot of this was reported, I said, from the Gray Zone and Huffington Post. And as far back as 2015, the Huffington Post, which is a pro-media, pro-West, publication. And it's all child trafficking. It's like women are, like, I guess, paid to use their womb to produce children, and they're not going to be their children. These children are going to be used for something. And this is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and of course that has a lot to do with this film, The Sound of Freedom. And Mel Gibson has been talking about that for a long time. Mark Wahlberg, and there's people like Will Ferrell and a lot of people that are really disgusted by this, what's going on. I mean, you should too. Everybody is, and the reason why it's not getting talked about so much, and it's become a multi-billion-dollar industry, is because it's so terrible to talk about. Nobody really wants to talk about it. Like Clayton Morris was saying, he'd love to talk about gardens and flowers and things like that, but this stuff is very important. And as we know, because President Vladimir Putin of Russia rescued a lot of these children from these orphanages where they were getting these children and using them for various things, Vladimir Putin is labeled a war criminal, and they're out to get him for that. I'll tell you, people, there's really high people, very rich, very prominent people that are involved in this. And well, I'll get a little bit, gosh, I got so many notes. I'll tell you right now, because it fits properly, and I try to miss it on my notes a little bit further on. There's Mark Wahlberg and Mel Gibson are kind of working together. They're making a movie, I believe, together right now. I don't know how close it is to being finished or whatever. And but there's rumors that they're going to be starting some kind of a studio independent of Hollywood, because there's so many sick people in Hollywood, apparently, this establishment. So they're trying to get away from that. And Mark Wahlberg is also very, very strong Christian, and so is, of course, Mel Gibson. And for that, they're double demonized, I suppose. Man, I tell you what, and you would think that all these people would be in support of somebody trying to expose child trafficking, and so much of Hollywood is very angry about this. Just find out who those people that are angry about it, and then maybe you can start looking into what kind of people they are. But anyway, and Vladimir Putin taking a lot of children from these orphanages and connecting them with other family members and giving them all a good home under Christian upbringings and things like that. And I guess that's a war crime. Makes you wonder if some of these people in the International Criminal Court, and I guess actually the main judge that has sentenced Vladimir Putin, I guess he's being sanctioned, I guess, by Russia, and it turns out he might not be such a nice guy. He might be involved in some of this kind of stuff here. So terrible. This is really terrible. And I'm saying multi-billion-dollar industry. And the United States was even talking about, it says here, I can't remember where I got that, might have been from Redacted, that the State Department reported on Ukrainian child trafficking in 2014. They're of course not going to talk about it now. And Russia is trying to report, way over 1,000 cases of, I think just child deaths alone. I mean, 1,000 reports, and there's probably many cases in these reports. Each one report might have multiple cases, and human rights groups refuse to look at this. Isn't this incredible? Because they're the evil Russians. My God, people. I don't know. I'd probably get censored on with this video. And of course, the United States or Russia, they're not a part of this International Criminal Court. They didn't sign this Rome Statute. I wrote that somewhere here. And Putin cannot travel to South Africa for the BRICS summit, mostly because of this arrest warrant. He doesn't want to. I think the leader of South Africa, Ramaphosa, he said he's not going to arrest Putin, but of course Putin doesn't want to start any kind of controversy, so he's not going to go. He's going to appear by video camera or something like that. The Sound of Freedom, and Amazon will not sell that. I'll tell you what, the Sound of Freedom is being blacklisted all over the place. Makes you really wonder what this billionaire, and a lot of these people that are in these, like I said, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and a lot of billionaires with a B are involved in this child trafficking stuff. And there's a lot of videos on YouTube about what Oprah Winfrey is involved in, that sort of a thing. Anyway, okay, the title of that Redacted, and hopefully it's not taken down, is called, it starts out the title, it says, "These are baby factories." So what they're doing is trying to put these women in these bomb shelters down there to live down there, and they're supposed to give birth to babies, and the babies are used for certain things. And I think it was David, who's also a part of the Redacted team. He's talking about the censorship. And we know censorship. I know censorship. Trust me on that. You all know that. Oh boy. And like I said, because people don't want to talk about it, that's why it thrives. And Maria Zakharova, she has come out, I guess there's evidence that Great Britain, the UK, is orchestrating this arrest of Vladimir Putin. It's all stemming from the UK. She calls it an Agatha Christie style sort of an operation, spy, whodunit sort of a deal, I guess. I haven't seen that, but I just heard about it. I should try to find that. So Maria Zakharova, you have to watch that. There's a lot of translations of her in English. So, oh, another thing. I think it was yesterday or the day before, Ukraine, they attempted a launching of a sea drone against Novorossiysk, which is, I was looking into this city many years ago, and at that time, the British were heavily investing there for tourism, and it was supposed to become the largest port in Russia, and it is already a big port there, and it's kind of a subtropical area, a little bit like California, because it's north of Sochi, and it is west of Krasnodar, very close to Krasnodar, and it's not too far from Rostov-on-Don or Sochi, of course. And like I said, the temperatures are very good there. You go towards the coastline. The problem with Novorossiysk is I think 1 or 2 days of a year they get heavy winds. I can't remember. It's really bad winds, and you pretty should stay inside. Strange, just a couple days. In the city itself, you don't really see that many trees, maybe for that reason. I don't know, but the area is very nice. It's very close to big, very productive farmlands out there. And the Ukrainians launched a sea drone, and this drone, I guess, was burning for hours and hours. So it lets you know they had a huge amount of flammables in this thing, and it was probably there to attack ships and whatnot. But like I remember back then, it was the British. They were building a huge hotel complex there, just some years ago. I don't know if how far along they got on that before, you know, it escalated, you know, against the British. Makes you really wonder, the British. But of course, that's private industry. British government, you know, they hate more than anything. The biggest hate in the world. And of course, it's the West itself is their biggest product now is hate, is Russia hate. I don't say Russia phobia necessarily, even though they are afraid of Russia, but they hate Russia. And they want everybody to hate Russia, and everybody is demanded to hate Russia. You're demanded to think very poorly and negatively about Africans, for example, but you're supposed to hate Russia. That's the law. And maybe that's why Russia and Africa are getting close together, and of course Asians too. But you know, there was a time, I think, that it looked like Asians were not really discriminated against, but I think it's a lot of time when it comes to education, they try to keep them out of the universities and things like that in the United States now. It wasn't like that when I was in there. I tell you, anything that has anything to do with mathematics, you had a lot of Asians in there, and they could do computations in their head faster than a calculator. It was incredible stuff. A lot of Asians anyway. Yeah, anyway, it's an interesting place, Novorossiysk. And like I said, that was supposed to be one of the biggest ports in Russia, maybe even in all of Europe at that time, where it's well situated on the Black Sea there. Oh, good, I'm coming to an end. Very long video. I think mostly it was just this, yeah, that I wanted to talk about was at the end was Novorossiysk. That's as far as I got in the notes. I didn't look into a lot of other news reports, which I could have, and made this video very long, much longer, but I think it's long enough, isn't it? And like I said, I don't get many much exposure. YouTube really doesn't send my videos to anybody. They don't get a cold call, as I guess you'd call it, you know, sending it, you know, like a cold call. I don't know what the term would be, a cold sending, or, you know, it's just not going to pop up in somebody's inbox. So, you know, if you guys could send it to somebody. Once, I believe it was Mike Jones, who, by the way, his channel is banned. I think he started another one. I don't know. I haven't seen anything lately from him, from that other channel either. And of course, John Mark Dougan has been banned from YouTube. I think these might be permanent bans. And so that's not too cool. But I think Mike Jones at one time, he had linked one of my videos, and I got like 3,000 some views, which was very good. That was a long time ago. And that's how I got a certain portion of my subscribers, and a lot of you have told me that. Thank you very much. And well, thank you very much, Mike Jones. And I should also add a little bit about, you know, like John Mark Dougan, if you write a note, be careful, because there's somebody there that is a fake, and they use his picture, John Mark Dougan's picture and everything, and act like they're John Mark Dougan, and they're, you know, trying to get you to send invest or something like that. They act like it's him. You know how that is. And I was thinking that was the same case with Gonzalo Lira, because I was in contact with Gonzalo Lira, and you know, then we I can't remember how first, and then somehow yeah, then we were on WhatsApp, and then all of a sudden it changed, and that's when they got him, and I thought it was a fake. And I thought, gosh, that's not Gonzalo Lira, because we had just started contact, and then all of a sudden it was like the tone was different, very different, and I guess that's when they took him in, and these it's apparently prisoners. I don't know if it was the guards, the correctional officers, but they had his devices, and there was one device he said they didn't get. It was in his motorcycle pouch, but apparently the one that I was corresponding with him with was one of the ones that was taken, because I think they started asking me to send a bunch of money or something like that, and that was on my other phone, and I lost well, I still have, I think I can get the WhatsApp on that, but the problem with that phone is you can only have WhatsApp on one phone, I took quite a while ago the SIM card out because that was from when I used to live in the Caribbean, and I don't get that number anymore. If your number is not used, they give your number to somebody else, and of course, apparently that's what happened. And if anybody out there who has that number, because I do have some friends that are on watching these videos, if you try to write to that number, the Caribbean type number, it's somebody else that owns that phone, so that's not me. And I guess they try to converse with whoever writes to them. I've heard that already. So, but it's not me. And anyway, on that phone I had Gonzalo Lira's WhatsApp. I still have his number on my other phone, but I tried to call that number and I was getting some recording. I'm not sure if it was Russian or Ukrainian. I just couldn't understand it no matter what. But like I said, I was thinking maybe it's fake or something like that. I thought it was fake because they probably wouldn't get access to his phone, but apparently they did, and they got his, his passwords and all that. So at that time I was actually probably communicating with either of these other inmates that were paid or threatened like to torture him when he was getting tortured there, or maybe it was the guards themselves trying to extract money out of me. I don't really know. But like I said, it was on my other phone, on that WhatsApp. So I'm not contacting with him. But just be careful on who, it's very difficult to know who you're actually, communicating with. I had that with somebody else too. You make a comment to somebody's video online, and then you get them to contact you, but it's just somebody else, and they fake it. They use the same picture from those people, and they fake it. So, but I don't know if that was the case with Gonzalo Lira. It was just maybe with just John Mark Dugan. Anyway, that's about it. And if you did get this by cold call, or if somebody sent this to you, don't be afraid to push that subscribe button. And like I said, I'm hopefully going to be doing some other things. And like I say, it's going to take a little while. And I was telling people before, that's another thing I should add, about some sort of a job position or a position. It's actually not really, it was actually an opportunity, and it was like at least for 3 days, and for that I would have had to cut my hair, and that was postponed. Everything is getting postponed. I was supposed to go to the nuclear contamination zone, and then they canceled that. They said it was something to do with weather, if it was too hot or something. I don't really know. I'll bet it was because they didn't have enough people. I don't know exactly. And another time would be, I think, the 25th of August that I could go, but this other one that was postponed, that was supposed to be happening on the 15th of July, they said that one is now going to be in about the 15th of August. So I cannot register, and you have to do it in advance to go to that nuclear contamination zone, because that's just too close. And it may not happen on the 15th, and I don't know if that's when the pre-things start, when I get evaluated and then maybe have to get a haircut. I hope I don't have to get it before, because just think, you're not even evaluated, you get a haircut, and I've been growing my hair for a long time. I don't have anything against trimming it, cutting off about 6 inches or so, but where all the down here where it's all kind of destroyed by the sun a little bit, and it gets tangled up easy. But I don't want to do it and then not get this. I don't want to tell you about it so much, because it may not happen, and then I'll tell you about it if I do get chosen. Before it even happens, I'll tell you about it, as long as I get chosen or get from the evaluation. If it even happens, I'll tell you what, if they're gonna postpone it again, I'm not gonna. And it is a very, very, very serious organization, so it's not like it's a bunch of jokers. This is. You'll hear about it sometime, but you have to subscribe, if you want to hear what I'm talking about. Hate to leave you in suspense like an Agatha Christie novel or something like that, but that's how it is. And so here I am going on and on and on, personal kind of stuff. And I was going to do a video yesterday, but the apartment, we had workers there, so another excuse. Excuses. Everything's getting postponed. It's all terrible stuff, but that's how it is. A lot of time this doesn't have anything to do with me. Most of the time it doesn't, because normally I when I say something, I really like to do it, and I like to do it when I say I'm going to do it. So anyway, so that's about it for right now, and who knows when the next one's going to be, if there's going to be any big events, or maybe I'll just talk some more as soon as I can find something something good enough to talk about. Let me walk out on this grass here. Too many people. So thanks for joining me, and subscribe if you haven't already. Push the like button. I guess that helps you get your videos sent further. I guess if you push the like button, then other people maybe get to see it. I don't really know how that works. So anyway, again, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.